In this video we'll dive into Control 283, which is about the various aspects of cryptography that must be included in the organization's cybersecurity requirements. Control 283.1 Approved Cryptographic Solution Standards and its technical and regulatory limitations. This subcontrol is about ensuring that the organization only uses cryptographic solutions that have been approved and are in compliance with national and international standards and regulations. For example, the organization can use the National Institute of Standards and Technology (NIST) guidelines to select and implement cryptographic solutions that meet the organization's needs while also complying with relevant regulations. Also, the NCA has a key national cryptographic standard that you can find in the NCA website. 2.8.3.2 Secure management of cryptographic keys during their life cycles. This subcontrol is about ensuring that the organization has proper key management procedures in place to protect the cryptographic keys used to encrypt and decrypt data. This includes procedures for key generation, distribution, storage, and destruction. For example, the organization can use a hardware security module, HSM, to securely generate and store cryptographic keys, and use key management software to manage their lifecycle. Control 2.8.3.3 Encryption of data in transit and at rest as per classification and related laws and regulations. This subcontrol is about ensuring that sensitive data is encrypted both when it is being transmitted over a network and when it is stored. This includes data encryption in email, web, and VPN connections, as well as in storage devices such as hard drives and removable media. For example, the organization can use Transport Layer Security (TLS) to encrypt data in transit and Advanced Encryption Standard (AES) to encrypt data at rest. The technology used to implement these controls will vary depending on the organization's specific needs, but common solutions include encryption software, hardware security modules, and key management systems. It's also important to review the controls periodically to ensure they still aligned with the laws, regulations, and the organization's needs. It's also important to ensure that the policies and procedures put in place to meet these controls are not only followed but also regularly reviewed and updated to ensure that they stay current and effective. When it comes to technology for cryptography, there are a few key tools and solutions that organizations can use to ensure compliance with the NCA/ECC standards Control 2.8.3. First, it's important to use approved cryptographic solutions that meet industry standards and have been tested and proven to be secure. Examples of approved cryptographic solutions include AES, RSA, and ECC encryption algorithms. These algorithms have been extensively studied and are widely used in the industry. Next, it's important to securely manage cryptographic keys throughout their lifecycle. This includes generating keys using a secure process, protecting keys while they're in use, and securely disposing of keys when they're no longer needed. One way to achieve this is by using a key management system, KMS, that automates key management tasks and ensures keys are only accessible to authorized parties. Finally, it's important to encrypt data both in transit and at rest. This is to prevent unauthorized parties from intercepting and reading sensitive data. For data in transit, this can be achieved by using secure protocols like SSL, TLS. For data at rest, you can use disk encryption software like BitLocker or Vericrypt. Additionally, you should ensure that the encryption is in line with the classification of the data and related laws and regulations. It's also important to periodically review and update the cybersecurity requirements for cryptography to ensure they stay current with the latest threats and industry standards. It's also important to note that when it comes to compliance with laws and regulations, you should always consult with legal professionals who are familiar with the specific regulations that apply to your organization. Next, we'll go over example scenario of how an organization might implement the controls in subdomain 2-8. Imagine that you work for a large financial services firm that handles sensitive personal and financial data for millions of customers. To comply with the NCA/ECC standard for cryptography, your organization would first need to define and document a set of cybersecurity requirements for cryptography. These requirements would likely include things like which cryptographic solutions your organization will use, e.g. AES, RSA, how keys will be generated, stored, and managed, and what encryption will be used for data in transit and at rest. Next, your organization would need to implement these requirements. This might involve installing and configuring cryptographic software on your organization's servers, workstations, and mobile devices, as well as implementing key management procedures and training employees on how to properly use and maintain the cryptographic solutions. To help ensure that you're meeting the requirements of 2.8.3, your organization would also need to perform regular reviews of your cryptographic controls to identify any issues that need to be addressed. For example, you might conduct regular vulnerability assessments to identify any weaknesses in your cryptographic solutions and make sure that your encryption is properly configured. To meet the requirement of the technology part of this control, your organization can use encryption software such as BitLocker, Vericrypt, or Discryptor to encrypt the data at rest. For encrypting data in transit, you can use protocols like HTTPS, SSH, or SSL. To make sure that you meet the control 2.8.3.2 for secure management of cryptographic keys during their life cycles, you can use key management software like KeySafe, KeyWiz, or CyberArk. In this scenario, you would be able to demonstrate that your organization is in compliance with the NCA/ECC standard for cryptography by showing that you have defined and documented your cryptographic requirements, implemented them properly, and are reviewing them periodically. There are several tools and technologies that organizations can use to implement these controls. For example, encryption software can be used to encrypt data in transit and at rest, and key management systems can be used to securely manage cryptographic keys. Organizations can also use security information and event management (SIEM) tools to monitor and detect any unauthorized use of cryptography on their networks. It's important for organizations to keep in mind that the use of cryptography is subject to various laws and regulations, so it's important to consult with legal and compliance teams to ensure that the organization's use of cryptography is compliant with all relevant laws and regulations. Technology-wise, there are many encryption software and tools that can be used to implement cryptography such as AES, RSA, and elliptic curve cryptography. Control 2.8.4. Some of the widely used encryption software are Vericrypt, BitLocker, OpenSSL, GNUPG. The cybersecurity requirements for cryptography must be reviewed periodically. This means that the organization should periodically review and assess their cryptographic controls to ensure that they are still effective in protecting information assets. The cybersecurity requirements for cryptography must be reviewed periodically. This control is about ensuring that the organization's use of cryptography is regularly evaluated to ensure that it continues to meet the organization's cybersecurity needs and is in compliance with organizational policies and procedures, as well as related laws and regulations. This may include assessing the effectiveness of the cryptographic solutions being used, evaluating the security of key management processes, and determining whether any changes are needed in light of new threats or changes in regulations. For example, an organization might conduct an annual review of its cryptographic controls to ensure they are still effective in protecting the organization's data. This review might involve an assessment of the organization's key management processes to ensure they are secure and comply with industry standards, as well as a review of the encryption methods and technologies being used to ensure they are still considered secure and are in compliance with any relevant laws and regulations. To implement this control, organizations can use tools such as vulnerability scanners and penetration testing to assess the security of their cryptographic controls, and also use tools such as encryption management software to manage and secure the cryptographic keys. It's also important to stay informed about new threats and updates to laws and regulations to ensure that the organization's cryptography controls continue to be effective in protecting the organization's information assets. It is important to note that encryption is one of the most critical components of cybersecurity, so it is important to make sure that the organization's encryption program is comprehensive and up to date,